All right, hello, everyone. My name is Ozo Namadim, or Ozamina Namadim, Ozo for short. I'm a CPA and a fractional CFO. Um, this presentation slash webinar is an abbreviated version of the Sweet Talk presentation that I facilitated with Dickie Como from the B Suite. It is a overview of the payroll administration and payroll tax compliance. Um, Kind of high level overview with regard to financial statements, the overall financial statement impact, and then key internal controls within the process. So I'll give a high level overview, and then I'll go into some details, and then share how Namadim CPA PLLC and the B Suite or Schools by B Suite can help your organization with outsourcing, and saving you time and money. So the first slide here, this is a high level overview of or I guess it's not so high level. This is the financial statement impact. So a full set of financial statements will include the balance sheet, income statement, cash flows, um, and the related footnotes. Um, Obviously, there's an equity statement depending on, what type of organization that you're a part, like how your organization is governed and established, slash structured. But for simplicity standpoint, the balance sheet, income statement, and cash flows, these are the relevant financial statement line items that would be impacted by payroll and payroll taxes, um, as well as the benefits that would be accounted for within the payroll process. So if you look at the balance sheet, there's going to be accruals. If your organization is an accrual basis entity, then you will have salaries and wages payable. You'll have accrued payroll taxes, um, and those will be current liabilities. The other liabilities could be employee benefits payable, health insurance, pension contributions, and other post-employment benefits. So depending on how your organization is structured and what the benefit package is, and who your um, outsourced asset managers to like manage your retirement plans, they would have an impact on the presentation on the financial statements. So that's what this section is. On the income statement, you will see payroll and benefits fall within the operating expenses. So in the following categories as salaries and wages, expense, employee benefit expense, and then payroll tax expense. The last section is the statement of cash flows, which directly relates to operating expenses. They would fall within the operating activity section of the statement of cash flows. And you'll have cash payments for salaries, cash payments for employee benefits, and you have cash payments for payroll taxes. Um, so those are the high level what financial statement line items would be impacted by accounting for payroll and benefits and the associated tax compliance. This slide here is a slide on just the key risk within the area. So the risk points within the payroll benefits and tax compliance all fall within these three buckets. The first is a fraud risk. And here are kind of some of the specific opportunities for fraud to enter into the payroll and benefits process. The second is the accuracy of the data that gets input into the system and it is entered into the accounting system. So making sure that, no data entry errors exist, no miscalculations exist, and that the regulatory filings are filed based off of the correct the correct calculations, which then will result in less penalties and underpayments for regulatory compliance. And then the third section is on security, IT security. So this is more system-wide. This relates to unauthorized access to sensitive data. So that can be personally identifiable information or HIPAA information as it relates to benefits. And then the second here is loss of data due to cyber breaches. So that is more general IT control environment. So those are kind of some of the key risks within the process. And then one thing to note is that, these are kind of high level, how it would impact the financial statements. Your auditors are auditing your financial statements for material misstatements, either due to fraud or error. So that is why these are separated in this way. So fraud risk don't have to be material in order for it to be a significant risk. And then the accuracy is more related to the potential errors that could exist, or accuracy and security relate to the potential errors that could exist within the payroll process. This segregation of duty slide is a high level overview around the types of responsibilities within the payroll process, and then which actual duties should be separated such that no opportunities for fraud to enter into the system, or no opportunities for misstatements due to fraud or collusion exist. Well, you can't circumvent collusion, but like for fraud. So here are four examples. It says separate these key functions. The first is timekeeping from attendance tracking. So employees enter their time into a specific system, and then a supervisor reviews and tracks it, reviews it and improves it. So making sure that those two, the data entry versus the data validation slash approval, is separate from one another. The second here is payroll tax calculation. So within the system, once the timekeeping information is entered into the payroll system, ensuring that that information is utilized to calculate the payroll, like each employee's individual payroll and the related taxes and deductions. That calculation should be separately reviewed by the actual payroll processor. So taking the time to calculate payroll as an overall for all of your employees within an organization, that is one bucket. And then the separate bucket is, how do you actually process it to make sure that the information is complete and accurate. And so that data will then get reviewed by a separate individual and make sure that it ties to the timekeeping records that were entered into the system. Once it's reviewed, then there's an authorization process. That authorization process again agrees to the timekeeping records, and then the disbursement agrees to the actual overall summary payroll report. All of that information gets extracted from the payroll system and comes out in the form of payroll summary reports and is entered into the accounting system through a GL reconciliation. So making sure that there's a review on the payroll journal entry on a recurring basis is crucial. So those are the four key areas of segregated duties within the payroll process, but there are more, and it'll also be unique to how your organization is structured. So here are some of the key internal control areas within the payroll process. So going back a couple slides, here are the three types of risk. And then here are the three types of controls to mitigate those risks. This timekeeping review is one specific internal control that should be implemented, separating who enters the time into the system versus who actually reviews it and approves it. The second is a data security question. It's around which system you're utilizing, which application controls are in place, who reviews the SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports. And then here are examples of the types of application controls that you would want to look for within the SOC reports. So that is related to the data security and the integrity of the information within your IT environment. And then the third is reviewing the payroll summary reports and making sure that the payroll summary agrees to the general ledger. So these are process level controls. The next slide goes into entity level control. So this is more at the governance level, macro level around which policies and procedures are in place. So specifically, this relates to what payroll policies your board has implemented, and areas to include within your payroll policies include data management over record keeping, specifically timekeeping, process approvals, review procedures, and then accounting policies. So how everything gets accounted for gets documented within the policies. And sometimes the accounting policies differ from the HR policies, and payroll will be in one or the other. But all four of these should be documented in between the two of those key policies. This second bucket here is on employee training. So to make sure that HR employees are aware and are knowledgeable about the key policies. So once they're documented, making sure that someone with the on staff has adequately trained employees within the process around the key steps and procedures to be implemented. So making sure that the actual controls are operating effectively, implemented and operating effectively. And then the third bucket here is on whistleblower protection. So this is more on protecting the integrity of the entire process. So if a supervisor is within a payroll process, and there's an opportunity for fraud to exist, there should be a specific whistleblower policy implemented that allows a subordinating employee to be able to elevate their concerns without retaliation. So that's what the whistleblower hotline internal control is. This last section here is on enrollment benefits or benefit enrollment and then the reconciliation process. So here are key areas within the benefit enrollment process, and some recommendations on benefit enrollment. So this includes specifically, go through the open enrollment process, making sure that it's automated. That'll make it super simple. So if you go with an outsourced provider, like an ADP, Gusto, or Portalis, you can utilize a software that will allow you to automate it. You review the system changes against like the election forms and the premium deductions, and then the employee verification should be reviewed and approved as well. And then here are key accounting reviews and reconciliation. So your benefit provider is going to be separate from your payroll administrator. And so within that entire process, you are reconciling the monthly invoices from your benefit provider to your payroll summary reports to make sure that each individual employee is covered. You make sure that benefit deductions agree to the amount that's being deducted from the payroll reports, and then you reconcile all of those reports to the journal entry, which is imported in the journal ledger. So that is the benefit enrollment and reconciliation process. Is critical to to conduct a couple of reviews of information. So here are kind of some 4 key points or 4 key times during an employee's life cycle. I mean, during an employee's tenure within your organization, when you would conduct a critical review of their payroll, benefit, and tax information. So when an employee is onboarded, when their employment contract changes, either through title, compensation, or some other change, and then a year-end review right before tax filing, so every year before January 31st. And then the last one is anytime an employee is off-boarded, making sure that their final payroll record, HR personnel file is complete and accurate. So here's some information to review specifically and validate, making sure that this is complete each time you do a critical review. So employee name, address, social, those are all going to be standard, date of birth. The calculation for tax withholdings, that is usually automated by the system, but agree that to the W-4. The benefit deduction, like I said, agrees to the provider's invoice. The salary and stipend agrees to the most current employment contract that you have on file, and then any other payroll adjustments that you have noted in record. Overall, so here's the information to review. The implication, if that information is incorrect, it could result in erroneous payroll filings. So your 940 and 941, which are due on a quarterly basis. And then your 990, which is due on an annual basis. If you have an error in either one of those error in any of that information, it can result in overpayments or underpayments, overpayments to employees and underpayments of underpayments of taxes. So that could result in fines and penalties. So making sure that you reconcile everything and agree it to the underlying invoices in the summary reports will ensure that you have like a complete and accurate payroll process. So here's some policy considerations to make sure are documented and included within your HR policies. These also simultaneously have an impact on the presentation of your financial statements. So although they are policy level, they also directly relate to the financial statements and financial reporting. So making sure that HR and finance are collaborating to properly document those policies and document the accounting implication of the policies as well. Between HR and finance, here are some key dates to include within your payroll calendar. So making sure that service dates align or everyone is on the same page around service dates for payroll periods, approval dates between HR and finance, between how time is approved versus when the payroll actual disbursement is approved, and then the check dates. And so some recommendations are keeping records of edits, keep records of internal deadlines, maybe share a few calendar invites, the last couple, or coordinate some calls to just talk through any unclear or unique circumstances, and then provide a preview of the payroll to review your payroll summary against the edits and notes to verify that everything is accurately reflected within the most current payroll draft before the payroll disbursement is approved. So the last slide here is work and outsourcing help. And the answer is it can help in any step within the process. So the first two columns over here share or show the HR versus the accounting side, how it's typically distinguished between the two functions within an organization. So HR will send the offer letter, welcome and onboard an employee. They'll collect the onboarding documentation and share that with the accounting record, with the accounting team. From the accounting team, accounting folks go into the payroll providers software. They set up an employee payroll record within the system, share their benefit information over to the provider. HR manages the collection of the documentation with regard to the HR policies and procedures, collects the employee certifications and attestations. Um, From there, accounting collects the payroll preferences with regard to how pay is dispersed. Um, the HR team will collect the benefit forms and manage all of the HIPAA information. And then the data gets entered into the system from a record and accounting keeping perspective. Um, Tax forms are collected and input into the system, and then the accuracy of that information is managed by accounting. So that is like typically how it's distinguished between HR and accounting. Um, Outsourcing can help in any one of those key steps. So wherever you think there might be a potential, need for additional capacity, that's where the outsourcing will come in. So that's what third column reflects. And so if you have any questions, definitely here's my number. Here's my email. Feel free to email me, my website, and give us a call. Give me a call, and happy to talk you through and walk through any of the more specifics to like your organization's process.